right? So what I learned in infancy in attachment theory is where our kids are asking two questions. One is, am I lovable? Am I enough for somebody to actually love me as I am? And the second one, is there anybody who has my back that I can count on when I fall? Is there somebody there who's not going to point finger at me and say, you messed up again, and you need to get your act together. So
Mhm.
in attachment words, that's connectedness and enoughness. And if
Mm.
parents can become that on a daily basis, in my online resource, Good Enough Parent, we encourage parents to randomly go to your child, random's key, and look them in the eye, make sure you have eye contact, put your hand on the shoulder so they can't go anywhere, and say things like, in your context, do you know how much I love you?
Mm.
I would buy stock in you. You and I are going to disagree on a lot of things, but I'm going to be there. You and I are going to be best friends by the time you're 30. And I'm just telling you that. And then say good talk and walk off, and do that randomly so that subconsciously
Mhm.
they begin to be aware of, yeah, my dad's kind of old fashioned, but he's got me, and
Mm.
I can count on him.
Yeah.
When I screw up, the first place I'm going to go is not social media, it's dad,
Yeah.
it's mom. That's what I suggest. That if we can do that randomly and regularly, I think it would make a difference. Conditioning, right?
Yeah, classical conditioning. We were talking about how the news, they will put a visceral emotional response picture and then blame a certain group, right? So when the brain, when it wires or it fires together, it wires
Mm-hmm.
together. So what that means is they are
Good.
constantly looking at the face of the screen of their little tablet or their
Yep.
phone, and they're getting a pseudo version of attachment
Mm-hmm.
because they're looking at faces all day, but it's not someone who
Good.
sees and knows me. I'm just
Right.
getting like a surrogate of it. I'm getting a false version of it. And then
Yeah.
I'm seeing horror and scary things and sexual things. And I'm seeing all of this. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
window of asking, who am I? What's my identity? What's my role? Am I good? Am I
Mm-hmm.
bad? What do I think about all these different parts of me inside?
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
love the intentionality of this book. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many layers. It's going into identity. It's providing an internal landscape, a theater for a child to play out the different
Yeah.
characters within themselves as they read this book. And then
Yeah.
now bringing it into the inner world of family dynamics. So I love the part where you said in our last episode, I need somebody who is like, I don't remember your words, but wildly crazy, ridiculous,
Yeah. Yuri
favoring me.
Bronfenbrenner. Every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her.
Yes. So, how do we do that? What does it look like as a parent to love your kids, totally disagree with what they're doing, and still be irrationally loving and favoring toward them?
Boy, that's a great question. I think so. Kids are pretty smart.
Yeah.
And if they look at, they're typically looking at you when you're upset at them or you're wanting them to do their get off social media,
Mhm.
whatever it is, it's often heavy, right?
Yeah.
Most often our parenting is done critically, most often. So
Mhm.
that's the significant touches, and I was at a conference and this guy was talking about the shoulder move. He called it something different, but I call it shoulder move. But he said psychologically, if you can put your hand on the back of somebody's shoulders when they're upset, when they're freaking out, and then tap their shoulders about at a heartbeat rate, look them in
Mhm.
the eye and say what I just said. Hey, I got this. You and I, man. If you mess up, I'm there with you. I'm with you. I'm not. I'll disagree with you. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm with you. I always have your back. There's a connection. There's a person who is irrationally crazy about you,
That's
and then
so
the next time they're more likely to come to you instead of going
exactly.
to their adolescent friend, or worse, going to social media. What
Yeah.
do I do if I'm feeling sexually out of touch? What do I do if, and you get advice, but it's in the context, it lacks intimacy. It objectifies the person, it
Mhm.
objectifies the problem.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating.
That's so frustrating. And I am on the auxiliary board of Untrafficked. So it's an untrafficking organization, especially focused in the United States. And some of the
Mm.
key factors we see when kids are being groomed is there's an
Mm.
isolating of pulling the child away from going to their family
Mm. Yep.
for context, questions, emotional needs, relationship. When they're upset,
Ah,
they'll go to their room, they'll isolate, they'll go to their tablet. And these groomers act like they were able to just rescue a teenage girl. She was 15. She thought on Messenger she was talking to a 16-year-old boy. And so the
ah,
boy was understanding, he's listening, they're developing this like friendship, and he gets me, and my family doesn't get me. And
right.
without realizing it, the family was parenting with fear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so we
yeah.
need to go back to that, because when we parent with,
Mhm.
don't do that, we live in a bad culture, you can't do this, and always
Yeah.
coaching and always teaching and always informing and talking at the girl, she didn't feel
Mhm.
seen and known. So that made a real vulnerability to talking to this friend who really gets her.
Oh,
He
yeah.
tells the
Never
girl,
criticizes her. Never criticizes her.
never,
Yeah, yeah,
only
yeah.
good. I'm the secure, safe attachment
Mhm.
who is ridiculously favoring you, when she didn't
Yeah,
feel that from her parents.
right.
So instead of recognizing the disconnect in the attachment, they just tried to lock down and
Yeah.
redirect behavior more.
Yep.
So then he said, hey, my car isn't working. My aunt is going to pick you up. And so come
Yep.
to find out, it was actually a female trafficker. She was not
Yep.
talking to a boy the whole time. It was an adult woman. And she picked her up and drove her from Houston to Dallas. And the good thing is, untrafficked, a little plug for my organization I believe in, their intel, they were able to arrive at the trafficker's home within 2 minutes before the girl was raped. So it
Good
was
for.
a 3-hour window that she was able to be brought back to her family. And now in family counseling, the family's
Mhm.
learning how to parent with a secure attachment style, empowering, loving, trying to provide guidance in a way
Yep.
that still feels like I see you and I know you and there's space for you.
Yeah.
Before, their motives were good, but they were seeing all the bad and chaos in the world. And so they were accidentally parenting out of fear instead of what you call just this like
Interesting.
unconditional love. And so I
Yeah.
love that full story of what makes us vulnerable to grooming. And by the
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
if a child ever gets in a situation, it doesn't mean it's the family's fault. That just happened to be one illustration. There's
Yeah.
multiple factors of why a
Oh,
child
yeah.
can be groomed. But be aware of that, because it makes them vulnerable if we're not truly delighting and listening. And it's
Yeah.
with our eyes.
Yeah. In Ephesians, Paul says there is a perfect love that casts out fear.
Mhm.
Or the Corinthians. Anyway, somewhere in the New Testament, I should know that. Uh, but there is a perfect love that casts out fear, and the word is beats up fear. Think of a of
Mhm.
MMA fight. It beats up fear and tosses it out of the ring. But it's this perfect love. It's uh, we tend towards it's discipline that casts out fear, or it's structure that casts out fear. All those things can be helpful, but there's this perfect love where the person feels loved that actually reduces relational fear and anxiety.
Mhm.
And that's a great thing. And that's what we're talking about. And so this poor girl is going to need perfect love to cast out the fear, the shame. Why did I get suckered into that? Am I a loser? Am I broken? Am I savable? Am I rescuable? I'm physically rescued, but oh my
Mhm.
gosh, all my friends, blah, 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 blah. And it's time for the parents to step up and go, hey, babe, we've got you. We are not going anywhere. We would have loved you anyway. We love you now as you are. Look at me in the eyes and you can see it. You can,
Yes.
and kids know this, right? You can't fake this.
Mhm.
Um, but we need to communicate that. And my son-in-law, he was the one who tossed in the random things. It's what he does for his little boy, who's now 8 years old. He randomly throughout the day walks up to Malcolm and says, "Hey, Malcolm, why do I love you so much?" And Malcolm, this 8-year-old, goes, "Gosh, I don't know, Dad, but you do." I mean, he's really confident in his dad's love for him, and his dad communicates that over and over and over, just randomly.
Mhm. I love.
I think that's a winner.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
your kid would go, "Oh, you're just saying that you're a parent." But
It's
condition
still getting
wise,
in.
it's getting in. Just drip, drip,
Yeah.
drip strategy into that place where that critical inner voice is.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we also don't want to be indulgent parents. So
Mm,
I think there's two sides, right? We can fall in one ditch of fear-based parenting where we're
right,
criticizing, we're
right.
attacking, We're saying, oh, that political person over the dinner table. And so it's all
Sure.
critical and negative, and it's the
Hmm.
opposite of the algorithm of what your child is seeing. And so they're
Right.
perceiving you as this bigot, this out of touch, this
Right.
terrible person. I don't think you know what's going on in the world. And
Right.
so without realizing it on
That's good.
one ditch, we come with so much negativity and fear, and we think we're coaching them. We think we're
Yeah.
helping awake them that this isn't good in society. But the way that you're going about it
Hmm.
usually causes them to
Oh.
discredit what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
So
It's like that mother in front of the infant. If the mother's frightened or angry, it
right.
doesn't matter if their face is up in front of that infant or not. The infant's not
Yeah,
going to respond well. They
exactly.
want to see that
Yeah.
they actually this face in front of them actually adores them, and they even infants can tell, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
Um,
speaking life, sharing things. And the
mhm,
other
mhm.
ditch is be careful that now it's this nice parenting. And nice can actually do a
Mm,
ton of damage because nice is not real. It's so enabling, it's so friend zone that you're not actually conveying, I'm an adult and I can provide that
mhm,
safeguard and that
mhm,
scaffolding
mhm,
that when
mhm.
you fall, somebody's got your back, that
Yeah,
I'm not so codependently needing you to like me, that
yeah,
then unconsciously that threatens the child, that they're like, I mean, I
yeah.
know I can manipulate my parents. Who's got my back? Who is smarter than me?
Right,
When
right.
parents have gone to the other extreme from generations of pull yourself
Yeah,
up by your bootstraps generation into
yeah.
like nice and indulging and, well, get high as long as it's at our house. Well, sleep with your
Right,
boyfriend as long as it's under our home and we can make sure you're safe. This
right.
very friend zone is
Sure.
actually conveying a lack of safety, a lack of boundaries and structure
Yeah,
that developmentally your child needs for them to be free to play
yeah,
and explore and figure out, who am I?
yeah,
So we have to toggle between not fear-based, but also not nice, that I'm
yeah,
placating things that are unhealthy. So what
yeah.
do you think? And let's dive into, what's the middle space look like?
Have you ever felt so stuck that it made you mad? Have you found yourself irritable and not understood why? My name's Eric Danielson, and I understand how that feels. I'm a retired Army flight medic with service to Iraq, and I'm a clinical social worker. I challenge you to book an appointment today with me at crawfordclinics.com so that you can invest in yourself and take back your courage and lead your family and your organization well.
Yeah, that's good. So the first thing that popped into my head, you and I talked about in the break, the chosen,
Uh-huh.
and when Jesus tells this, loves this prostitute, right? They're about to stone
Yeah.
her, and Jesus says, "I'm not going to stone her." And he looks at her in the eyes, and I'm sure he did. I'm sure she resonated with this man looking at her that way. And we all know what that
Mhm.
way would have been, not sexually. It would have been appreciative of this person, who they were. But
Mhm.
then he says, "Go and sin no more."
Yeah.
And that is the love of God. The love of God is because of Christ, he actually loves me, but he hates the sin. Jesus actually had to die for that. There is a combination of, I love you, so I want your best, uh,
Mhm.
but I'm not going anywhere. If you screw up like God's love, he will never abandon me.
Yeah.
That is amazing
Yeah.
because I've been abandoned by others. This
Mhm.
is this is remarkable. So if I can communicate to my kids, hey, I might disagree with you on your sexual choices.
Mhm.
I probably will, and drug intake. I'm going to have some laws in the family. We're going to struggle with this, but I'm never leaving you. I am never, ever, you are never not going to be my child that I love. And we're going to have to
Mhm.
work on some things. And you're going to see ugly faces every now and then when I hear what you've done. But I'm going to come back the next day and go, I'm not going anywhere. It's you and me,
Mhm.
and I'm going to help you pick things up. Isn't that the middle zone?
Yeah, I think that because I've worked with enough people
Hmm.
that they had cool parents. So the cool parents hosted the
The cool
parties. The
parents. Yeah.
cool parents are nice, they're fun. Everybody loves hanging out at the house
Mm-hmm.
with the cool parents. They had the
Mm-hmm.
better alcohol, they had lax rules, you could do whatever you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, as an adult, walking away going, why didn't they love me enough to
Yeah, there it
see
is.
that that wasn't good
There
for
it
me?
is. There it is.
Why don't you love me enough to tell me no, to help me study, to
Yeah.
help me get into college and not do it for me. And then now I'm totally under equipped and I don't know how to launch or do anything in
Right.
life. Or
Right.
one girl being raped in her bedroom because the parties were going on in the house and the parents are like, hey, you guys are cool because you're in our house. And so trying to be cool
Yeah.
actually created, while the girl at the time would have said, yeah, I have cool parents, but
Yeah.
internally she was feeling very unworthy of being protected, unworthy
Yeah.
of being covered, a
Yep.
sense that I am more responsible than my parents who are just
Yeah.
indulging things that in
Yep.
retrospect convey you don't love me
It's
and you
good.
don't care. So I
And
think there's a
that's
balance
good.
when we can say, I delight in you, I love you. It's with my eyes, it's my body language,
That's good.
that there's so much
That's
love
good.
towards your identity, and reminding children, hey, in this house, I just want to remind you,
Got
this
rules.
leads to this, and this leads to this.
Yeah.
No problem either way. I love you no matter what, but I love
Yeah.
you enough to
That's
make
good.
sure there's strength, there's scaffolding, there's boundaries, there's
Yep.
limits. And when you don't love me and you're mad and you don't like what I say, I still love you. And I'm still
Yeah.
going to keep those boundaries as safeguards, even though it doesn't make sense today.
Yeah.
I want to empower the listeners today that
Yep.
even though you may be unpopular today, and of course, your child will say, but mom, dad, everybody else's parents let them. Too bad. You are the safeguards. You are the parent of this
Yeah.
child. And when you
It's
lean
good.
into that place of authority, not in anger, not in judgment of, yeah, well, those are bad parents, blah, 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 but like, hey,
Right.
I love you enough to
Yeah.
invest in you today because I
Right.
know there's greatness in you. And
Yeah.
these choices today set you up for success. And
That's
that's
good.
why I'm parenting you different,
Yeah.
not I'm discrediting somebody else by acting superior in our parenting.
And when we mess up, when we act in anger, which we do, I mean,
Yeah,
I have, we come back the
sure.
next day and go, man, I just totally blew that.
Yep.
And please forgive me. And the other thing in my good enough parent program online, the goal is not to fix my kid. I've never met a fixed teenager, right? I don't even know what that even would look like, right? It is to be their best friend by the time they're 30.
Hmm.
So, the brain's finally developed in the 20s, early 20s, and they finally see what we were trying to do. But the messaging they remember is me randomly, regularly saying, I'd buy stock in you. I can't wait to see the person you're going to grow up to be. I can't wait to see who's going to marry you because they got to be special and they're going to be so, I mean, those kind of things, right?
Yes.
And then, but no, you can't have a party over at Johnny's when their parents aren't there, you
Right.
know?
Yes.
And let your kid blow up. That's part of parenting. But then come
Mhm.
back and say, by the way, I can't wait to see how you're going to grow up, and we're going to disagree or angry at me. But I just wanted to say that. And if we can do that 10 times compared to the one blow up,
Yeah.
and that's the good enough parenting, the 30%. If just one out of three interactions with my teen can be, I'd buy stock in you, we
Mm.
win. And our
Yeah,
kids grow up, I think, more secure. That's what attachment theory would say.
exactly.
One out of three. We can do that.
We can do this. Yes. And at Crawford Clinics, one of our favorite stories that this family, their kid was out and wild and doing the things and totally opposite to how they had raised the child. And the family was like, okay, we're going to just work on ourselves. The kid won't come.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get them to go to church. We can't get them to go to youth group or therapy or
Mm-hmm.
counseling.
Yep.
So, what can we do as a family to support and
Mm-hmm.
set them up for success the best we can? And
Yeah.
so, as we taught them to start speaking identity,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the family members just kept saying to the child, you're called to preach. I'm going to see you on stage. You have a calling on your life. And the kid would roll their eyes. I don't want anything to do
Yeah.
with religion. That's blah, blah, blah. And he would always discredit it and get annoyed and agitated. But they said it repeatedly. I'm going to see you influence a lot of people. You're going to be a father of the next
Mm-hmm.
generation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So fast forward years later, so they had to be pretty
Yeah.
consistent. This isn't like a one and done, but in their
Yeah.
consistency, this son woke up one morning, hung over with some random person in bed and didn't know where he was. And those words just started marinating. And it just marinated inside of him. And
Fantastic.
that's all he could hear. And he knew it was safe to go back to his parents. And so, fast forward, he became a pastor and really
Did it?
loves kids and
Yeah.
loves as a youth pastor. He really invests in the kids that feel
Mhm.
unworthy and not good enough and rebellious, and they don't like their parents' religion and their parents' God. And all those words,
That's
repetition, slow and steady, it got into his psyche, and he is
that's the
now living
messaging.
that.
It's easy. And yeah, so back to the first program, we talked about what kids need. We know that they're getting bombarded with a different kind of message.
Yeah.
You're good if you've tapped into your sexuality, or attractive, or
Mhm.
funny, or have 10,000 likes, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Very addictive. And what we're saying is, parents, 1 out of 3, or friends of teens, pastors of teens, 1 out of 3, they just need to hear just they're lovable as they are.
Yes. Yes.
And
Okay.
can't wait to see how they grow up. I think it's a powerful message. I don't think it's a mystery. I just think we need to consistently do it.
Yes, agree. And that reminds me, so we had left our cliffhanger in our last episode saying we have a trilogy in your book series. And you
Yeah.
said, I think the second book is really going to explore sexuality, which is really taking center stage of our
Yeah.
culture right now. Walk us into that.
So the storyteller in the first book actually gets kidnapped at the end of the first book, and I won't tell you too much, but
Don't
her
give it away.
dark secrets start coming out, and
Um,
she's heard all of the stuff about the love of the king in the first book,
mm,
but she realizes something's wrong, and it's exposed. I mean, you can see the scars on her arm from self harm,
mhm,
and it turns out that her father actually made her become a boy so he could sell her to the Navy.
mhm,
Back in those days, that's what happened, the press gangs. And so she became a boy. She was forced to become a boy,
mm,
and a pirate, by the way. Um, so she has to deal with that. And so she is brought on another quest, a different kind of quest, in order to find healing for past wounds that
mhm.
she had covered up
Wow.
and pretended she was okay, because she was the storyteller in the first book. So where do
Mm,
I find, for children, particularly girls, who are struggling with shameful things that they have done,
mhm.
where they have found soothing through various things? Could be drug, could be sex, could be cutting,
Yeah.
could be a number of different things, or sexuality.
Mhm.
Where can I find now healing?
Yeah.
I'm no longer trying to deal with the critical inner voice in my head alone. I'm actually dealing with actions, things that have happened to
Mhm.
me that I can't go back and change. And my dad, I'm never going to be able to address the perpetrator. It was basically a drive-by shooting. So what in this kingdom with this great king can be done?
Mm. Ah, great
Yeah.
cliffhanger. I'm like in it. I'm like, okay, oh, you're going to make us read the book. Well,
It's a
I
great
picture
story. No,
myself
it's a great story.
on the beach with this book trilogy. I'm going to love it. And let's talk for a minute, a little bit more about the confusion over gender and identity and who am I? And what are your thoughts to help equip parents as their kids are trying on different identities and sexualities and
Yeah.
asking the question, essentially, who am I?
So, yeah, and believe me, my phone's been ringing off the hook for the last couple of years with parents who are struggling with that, and their kids being influenced by culture, by social media, and by
Mhm.
schools, by education, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, Again, let me go back to that infant who's standing up in their crib screaming because they're afraid, they're scared, they're insecure, they're dysregulating, and they want that safe face who loves them as they are and can fix the problem,
Mhm.
change the diaper, feed them, comfort them, right? That's what we're all looking for. That's what teens are looking for. Teens aren't looking to change sexuality by nature. That's just a lie. They want they want the anxiety gone.
Yeah.
They want to feel good about themselves. And somebody has told them they're not good as a woman or a man. They need to
Mhm.
change in order to feel better about themselves. But it's not about the sex as much it is the sexuality, as I just want to feel like somebody likes me, that I
Mhm.
connect somewhere. So I'm enough, and I'm connected somewhere. And if they've found that, if they have that context with their family, with their church, with God, the sexual exploration, the sexuality exploration, the sexual dysphoria is going to be minimized.
Mm-hmm. And the body dysmorphia of feeling
and
like
body
there's
dysmorphia.
something about my body that's wrong.
Right.
And we've seen it over and over that people that start with the narrative of some kind of belief that I'm not smart, I'm not good, I think I'm autistic, I think there's just something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm,
And well,
mm-hmm,
maybe I'm
mm-hmm,
gay. Well,
mm-hmm,
maybe I need to
mm-hmm.
transition. Well, maybe, and
Right.
I so far in limited experience, I'm sure other people have other experiences. So
Mm-hmm.
far, I have seen it continue and never actually settle and feel reassured in their skin. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
seen that so far. I'm not
You
saying it
haven't.
doesn't exist. All I'm saying is
When they
I'm seeing
changed,
over,
when they explored the other sex, you
yeah,
mean?
everything.
Oh,
No
yeah.
matter what people do, if there's a core belief that I'm not enough, I'm not in the right body, I'm
That's
not in the
exactly
right
it.
gender, I'm not in the right family,
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
in the right
exactly it.
skin, I'm not in the something, I would
Exactly.
say probably we need to explore. And again, I don't
Yeah.
want this to sound like
Yeah.
rudimentary and overly simplistic, but many
Yeah.
times there's a core shame belief that there is something
Yeah.
about me. And then in a culture that's quick to offer, well, try this, do this. These thoughts enter our mind, whether it generates from the self within or it comes from the culture of like, well, that's getting a lot of attention. That person looks happy. You know, I
Yeah.
remember being in middle school and I was struggling
Mm-hmm.
with my weight. And they showed
Mm-hmm.
us
Mm-hmm.
here's the dangers of eating disorder. All I saw as a middle schooler is that lady is fat and now she's skinny and she used bulimia to get there. Great. I am now bulimic. So it was like a how to when they were trying to
Yeah.
give information of what
Yeah.
not to do.
Yeah.
I just saw that person is miserable. Now they're happy. Maybe miserable me can do this
Conditioning.
and that'll make me happy.
Conditioning again, right?
Yeah. I think we have to go a bit deeper as a culture that we're quick to just change something, jump out of a marriage, jump out of a career, change this, change that,
Right.
instead of saying, hey, what in me is not settled? Why am I
Yeah.
symbolically rejecting, changing the outside me? Because odds are good, inside me is not content and it is not well with my soul.
Yeah, I think the why is important, but I think why is just we're human in a fallen world. I mean,
Mhm.
every generation has whatever that is. When I was young, it was being a hippie, being drugs, having free sex. Then there was music and wearing dark and black. And I mean, we've all had those. Every generation has this thing that if I just do this, I'll feel better about myself. It seems
Mhm.
like the common human problem is I'm entering into this turmoil in my brain and neuroscience and
Mhm.
development of neural networks. The 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, and I don't feel good. I want to
Yeah.
feel good. And I feel like I'm a failure, and I seem to be the only one going through this. And so I try cutting myself, and I get a hit. It's a dopamine thing. I cut again, or I take a drug, or
Mhm.
I do sex, or whatever it might be. I go into gaming.
Mhm.
I into gaming, and I'll feel better about myself, but I don't. There's a great. Did you know there is one country in the world that has actually classified gaming as an addiction, official addiction? That and they the official stand of this particular country is it is the greatest problem in that generation. It is the most
Mhm.
destructive, they actually form clinics paid for by the government where all the parents can take their gaming addicted child to those clinics to be healed.
Mhm.
Do you know what country this is?
No.
China.
Interesting. It's
Yep.
kind of like
And
the dopamine dens or opium dens, where it's like it's just so sedate and you
sure.
don't have a work ethic, you don't have a drive, you don't want to have a family, you don't want to pursue goals outside of the addiction of the game.
And you get addicted. And here's what they found. What they found when they started debriefing and counseling these poor kids, most of them boys, but nevertheless, there were girls as well. You know what
Mhm.
they found in common?
Loneliness.
Father issues. They
Hmm.
did not feel loved by their father. In the Chinese culture, and much of the Chinese culture, fathers back off after the kid's a toddler and becomes distant by nature because they become the disciplinarians, right? Let the mother embrace and touch and do those sort of things. And so they have a lot of daddy issues. And to replace that, gaming worked,
Yeah, and
but
it's
it
something
didn't
that I
because
get to
these kids were
prove.
miserable.
Yeah,
So
I get
back
to
to
prove myself and conquer something,
feel
and it's
better.
something and
So,
put my
so back to the
identity in that.
yeah. So back to the problem. I think the common human problem is, and this is Christianity says this, is I'm isolated in the universe, and what Jesus did is he formed a new relationship with me and God, and I can actually feel that because of the Holy Spirit in me. I can actually feel good about myself because I'm looking into the eyes spiritually of God, and He looks at me and goes, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
Mm,
Me, yeah, through Christ. I mean, He did that, but yeah. You're my beloved son with whom I'm well pleased. Me? And I can see that by faith through the Holy Spirit. Paul says in Ephesians 3, I can actually experience the love of Christ. Then I need the rest of the stuff less.
yes.
It's still a
Mm-mm.
problem, right? I mean, this isn't heaven,
Mm-mm.
but I need it less.
Yeah.
I did one of my last sermon series as a pastor, lead pastor, was through the book of Judges. It's book of Judges. It's a
Light
horrible.
reading.
Yeah. So about halfway through, we were going through Samson, and these two young men came up to me afterwards. Said, people greeting the pastor, blah blah blah, and they said, "Pastor, hey, we want to introduce ourselves. I'm so and so. I'm so and so." And I went, "Hey, great to have you here." They said, "We've been coming for the Judges series, and we just want to let you know we're gay." I went,
Uh-huh.
"Hey, fantastic, great. Love. What do you think?" He said, "Well, that's not why we want to meet you. We've been hearing you pray after the sermon about the
Mm,
love of God
yeah.
and taking communion, the love of Christ is usually what an embracing." And they said, "We are actually feeling God's love. We just want to let you know we no longer identify as gay. We're identifying as children of God. We're committed to not having sex anymore with each other." And I went, "This is a strange conversation, but that's fantastic." And I I went and had a beer with them, and I said, "Can you tell me what you heard? Because I want to say it more." We didn't do a sermon on it, right? They started coming to a discipleship group where we have them pray certain prayers, and about a third of the way through it, they came and said, "By the way, we're no longer identifying as gay or homosexual. We are identifying as children of God." And
Mm,
so, I thought, that's cool. And it had
yeah.
nothing to do with me convincing them or condemning
Mm,
them or criticizing them. All they experienced from me was, "Hey, come into my home to a discipleship class. This is fantastic."
mm.
And they said they still struggle
Sure.
with the temptation, with the addiction, with the need for
Uh-huh.
that acceptance they got while having sex. But they said we just don't need it as much.
Wow.
Isn't that
Because you're
great?
feeling the deeper longing for
Which we
attachment
all
and
have.
relationship inside. I
Whether you're
love
a boy or a
that.
girl, we all have that. And it
Yeah,
goes into adulthood, right?
absolutely. And I'll brag on my dad. He has leaned in adulthood. My mom went to heaven, and he has
Mm.
really just been this phenomenal dad who has loved me really well through hard seasons.
That's
So,
great.
just dads out there, no matter how old your kids are, please still call them dollface, call them my hero son or whatever. Like, my dad literally is my only
It's
donor
good.
to my nonprofit. I don't advertise my nonprofit, it's a baby. But he's like, "I invest in other ministries. Why would I not invest in you? I believe God has great things for you." And so he speaks identity. So I look at my life and I'm like, wow, I
Mhm,
really have achieved a
mhm,
lot for a young age. And I have to credit it.
mhm.
My dad, my whole life, has championed me
I
and said,
love
"Of
it.
course you can do that. Of course it's going to be hard, but you're
I love
capable."
it.
Of course. And so I just want to end on that note that just like that
Yeah.
family did, where they said, "I see what you're doing now, but this is what I know you're called to." Now, that
Yep.
took a lot of work for themselves to remove the fear and the shame of, did we mess up? We're bad parents. Why is our kid struggling
Right.
so much? Getting over themselves. It's not about
Right.
you. Your kid has their own journey. So don't let the enemy, make negative thoughts for yourself, but just
Right.
pray into the identity God says about your child. And
Right.
just like my dad or this family or many others that we've worked with at Crawford Clinics to help repair the family unit, when
Mhm,
you
mhm,
bless them,
mhm,
you
mhm,
speak identity, just like what Israel used to do, where the father would bless the next generation.
mhm,
They would
mhm.
speak identity and blessing. By having that, I've noticed I'm a high achiever. And I really have to credit it to having a dad who has proactively done that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
moms are great, but there's some things we have to get from a male. So if you're a single parent, You can also get it from healthy people at church, in your community, uncles, other people. Just obviously use wisdom and discretion. Not everybody that wants to mentor a child is safe, unfortunately. So we
Yeah.
have to use wisdom. But as a single parent, you can still lean into the body of Christ.
Oh, absolutely.
Let people be a part of that story. And
Oh,
then
absolutely.
something God used in my life was Graham Cook and Bill Johnson, different older gentlemen that really have a soothing, warm, paternal voice. And I started to project that onto Father God, when before I was scared, not because of my dad, it was actually someone else who was an authority figure that I perceived as scary. And so I was afraid of God being mad at me all the time, not because of my
It's
parents,
a real
but because
deal.
another source in my life. And so you can put other things like this book series,
Yeah.
that now there's another narrative, there's another typology that people can draw from inside.
The
So
Chosen series too.
the Chosen series,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Oh, the first episode alone, when she's like, he said my name.
Amazing. I know.
You know?
They did such a great job. I've told people I hope Jesus is at least as good as this guy.
It's so good. Okay, so remind people as we're wrapping up for today how they can get your books and your resources, your courses, parenting, all the things.
Website, gospel-app.com, and you can find the parenting class on there, Good Enough Parent, as well. The book is on Amazon and Kindle, and there will be an Audible version that I've done, which was a lot of fun. It's called Tale of the Unlikely Prince. Tale of the Unlikely Prince. And it's got a great cover. I mean, the artist did a super cover. We've already received a 5-star review from Reader's Favorite. It's entered in an international book contest.
Fantastic.
So it's a lot of fun.
So fun. Well, as always, it is fantastic to have you as our guest, and we'll have to have you back.
Thank you,
Bye,
Dr. Crawford.
guys. See you for the next episode.
Have you ever felt so stuck that it made you mad? Have you found yourself irritable and not understood why? My name's Eric Danielson, and I understand how that feels. I'm a retired Army flight medic with service to Iraq, and I'm a clinical social worker. I challenge you to book an appointment today with me at crawfordclinics.com so that you can invest in yourself and take back your courage and lead your family and your organization well.